you find adventure at the click of a button, or from the turn of a page, or the casting of a die. Join your hosts, Coniff and Shiloh, on an unforgettable journey. Questing the Multiverse.
Welcome to episode 36 of Questing the Multiverse. Shiloh, it's been 2 weeks. This whole moving business is for the birds or the dogs, or what's the animal people say for that?
For the birds, I believe. Yeah.
Well, it is for the birds. We are in the hurry up and wait segment of this, even more so than we were last time we recorded. But I did want to mention that very soon we are closing. We're going to start moving in. The show is not going anywhere as far as wrapping it up. It's the end of Questing the Multiverse. No, Shiloh and I designed this so that way if we take breaks, we come back. It's the same thing. It's a evergreen. That's the term. That's a business term. It's an evergreen podcast concept. So while we weren't here last week, it was Memorial Day weekend, and some company was in town, and then I'm going to be moving, and then we're going to have vacations. Shiloh's going to probably the moon or something.
I am going to the moon.
Nice.
Yeah.
They let people like you in rocket ships, I guess.
Yeah, only on Sector 849Z. So that's where I'll be staying.
Oh boy. Well, so like I said, this isn't the last, certainly not the last episode of the year, but the next few weeks are going to be interesting. And then at some point in June, we're going to try to have Jordan back again. And then we were going to do an original break in July because Shiloh's going on vacation. Are you going on vacation beginning of July or end of June?
End of June, early July.
Right.
But I should be able to make... We'll see. We'll talk about it later.
Right. And it's like, if you can't, it's the summer. School's out for the summer. Teachers don't teach in the summer. Alice Cooper is out for the summer.
He sings songs about it.
But that, it's just the nature of the beast. But this was going to lead me into, so we're going to talk about what we've been up to, because it has been 2 weeks again. And Shiloh and I have both been busy in various different things. But I did want to segue the summer concept, or this sort of busyness and, vacation, all the stuff, to this next topic and get your opinion on this, Shiloh. So last year, at this time, I believe, if you can recall back, I believe the games you and I and our little friend circle were playing was Division 2, because I believe we had finished Divinity Original Sin 2 up in late April, and then I played Jedi Survivor at the beginning of May, and then I think Half-Life or Black Mesa. And so anyway, around this time was Division 2. But the more important thing is we were, to our knowledge at the time, 2 months away or 3 months away from Baldur's Gate 3 release. And so what I wanted to pose to you is what I was in the shower. We'll just leave it at that. No, I was in the shower and I was thinking about how I don't think I have been as hyped for a game as I was for Baldur's Gate 3. We played Divinity Original Sin 2, both you and I, and that was both of our first experiences with Larian Studios. And so at this point last year, in the beginning of the summer, the hype was just compounding inside of us for Baldur's Gate 3. We were planning Questing the Multiverse, or talking D&D, Honor Among Thieves, all this stuff. So my question to you is, maybe aside from Baldur's Gate 3, what are some of the biggest hypes no matter the outcome, whether they met the hype or it was a letdown, what are some of the biggest hypes for video games you've had over the course of your video game playing life?
Dang, that's a good question.
Do you want me to, while you think, do you want me to, because I have an off the top, or not off the topic, but like a off the dome answer for myself, and that's Fallout 76. So I think it would have been 2018. Todd Howard gets on stage at the Xbox Showcase or E3 or whatever it was at that time, the Bethesda Showcase. And they mentioned Rage 2 maybe was one of the games, I think. But more importantly, he came on to talk about Fallout 76, this brand new multiplayer Fallout experience, and 16 times the detail. Like, that's like the famous thing that he said from it. Or it just works. That, I think, was a comment of his as well. And so I bought all the way into this. I've always loved Fallout. I've loved 3, New Vegas, 4, and, you know, we're getting to the 76. But he talks about it. The video is great. I loved the Appalachia setting, I guess, because it wasn't a city like, you know, Boston or the capital. And then I just loved the concept that he talked about with like the cryptids and everything, because Fallout's always been great about that stuff, right? Like Fallout 3, like the alien, or, you know, the super mutants, the super mutant behemoths, death claws, like these wild monsters that you could just come across. New Vegas had, you know, Deathclaw Alley and the Quarry. Fallout 4 had the behemoths, death claws. I know that the Far Harbor DLC had some other stuff. So anyway, I was just super pumped for this. I ended up pre-ordering it even. I didn't do like the whole duffel bag fiasco, but I pre-ordered just a physical copy of it. Was so excited to play it. And that was probably, I would say, the last game that I actually, like, months, at least half a year ahead of time, was like fully invested in.
I got another one that you can add to that list.
Okay.
That you probably maybe forgot about a little bit. At least it definitely popped in my head when you first asked the question, which was Cyberpunk 2077.
Okay. How long had you been following that game before 2020?
A good while, and it wasn't necessarily that IP or the fact that CD Projekt Red was doing it. It was the fact that I've always thought that someone should make an actual RPG in like Shadowrun, or I mean,
like
Shadowrun
a first-person open world,
a first-person cyberpunk-based game.
Okay.
You know, Shadowrun has had some more like ARPG games out there, or some real bad, not looter shooter, but kind of that sort of thing. You know, where it's like first-person shooter, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense for that. Even though it made sense for Cyberpunk 2077, that because they did it well. But this was the Shadowrun game that I'm thinking of was not done very well. So the fact that that game was coming out, that CD Projekt Red was behind it, I was pretty hyped for that. So a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, I'd been following it, and so finally it showed up, and was pretty excited to get my hands on it. So
that's a good answer. And I didn't know it really existed until I think 2020, the beginning of 2020, because Moses in our Discord, he had been following it. I mean, I guess it had been talked about for like 10 years or 7 years or something ridiculous.
Yeah, been a while.
And he mentioned it or showed, they did like some like 40-minute like gameplay teaser, and I watched it and I was hooked, and it also helped that I had just finished, because I think it took me from 2019 to the beginning of 2020, like a full year to beat The Witcher 3, just the base game. And then I dived into the DLCs, I think, in 2020. And that, I didn't know CD Projekt Red existed until then. But yeah, I guess that's a good example too. I mean, I did pre-order that game. I wouldn't say I was hyped for it as I was Fallout 76. And of course, history knows how both those games launched.
Yeah.
But
not very well.
I was trying to think of something even further back in time.
Yeah, I can think of MMOs that I was very excited for. Whether or not they fully lived up to the potential and the hype remains to be said. I don't really, I don't know. I guess they sort of did in a way. No, I'm thinking of Rift. I had been following that game for a while. In fact, that was not the sole reason. I think the big reason for me going out to Penny Arcade Expo in Seattle was for D&D and that sort of thing. But also I knew that Rift had a presence there. And they were unveiling stuff, and you're going to be able to see the game and talk to the devs. And one of the devs, Scott Hartzman, I think is his name, was one of the devs of EverQuest 2. So,
okay,
there was a connection there. But that game, for what it was at the time, I think, and it's still going. I don't think Tryon, I think, was the original name of the studio that made it, but I think that they since sold it off to like a free-to-play company that probably has done nothing to the game. I don't really know. I haven't been following the game since many years ago, but that and Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Yes,
I followed that for a very long time, and they had all of the really, really well done trailers.
Oh, yeah.
that are still fun to watch.
Yeah.
And that game was, I think it sort of lived up to the hype, although it was a beast back in the day to run on a PC. And I've always scraped by on PCs, never really invested a whole lot of money. I think my PC currently is probably the most money I've spent on one. So, it struggled. My PC did to play that game, but got through it. So those are the ones that come to mind. Nothing at all compared to the hype I was experiencing for Baldur's Gate 3, because I had played 1, I had played 2, Icewind Dale, I'd played all of those. So I'd played all the precursors, all the stuff that came before Baldur's Gate 3 I had played. And of course, Baldur's Gate 3 was nothing like any of those, but it was in that same spirit. So obviously the same world, and that's the biggest.
That's the big takeaway, or the big important piece. I was going to piggyback on SWTOR because I would have been, it came out in 2011? 2008?
I don't know.
No, it might have been 2011, I think. I think it was announced in 2008. What I will say to its effect is I played KOTOR 1, so Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 1, a very iconic game. And then Obsidian did Knights of the Old Republic 2, and that game was a little more controversial at launch. It wasn't as good as 1 at launch. There were more bugs, whatever. In hindsight, I think I like 2 better, although 1 is iconic. Either way, played both of those games around when they came out, which is like early to mid 2000s. And then we get wind of SWTOR in, did you look it up?
Yep. 2008 is when it was announced. 2011, it came out in the States, in 2012 in Asia and Oceania.
Yes. And so I was massively excited for that, being a huge Star Wars fan. Now, I remember hearing that it was going to be a PC MMO. At the time, my only experience with PC MMOs was RuneScape, and so I was like, I mean, can it run in a browser? And
well, that's a valid question.
Fast forward to 2009, I get a laptop. 2010, at some point, or maybe early 2011, because I was following it this whole time, I got invited to like an alpha or beta test. I think it was like a beta test or something. They didn't do alpha tests back then like they do now, where they're like, oh yeah, we just got this game working. Here, let's throw players at it. I'm looking at you, Star Citizen, and maybe Ashes of Creation come the fall. So it was a beta test, and I remember getting into this test super excited because Star Wars MMO, and because it was a test, you didn't have to pay for the subscription. And so I install it, fire up the launcher, get in, and I'm creating the character, and it's a bit slow, like not like a slideshow, but definitely, I click on something and, it takes a bit. And so I was like, oh, well, if that's the worst, like, it's doable. So I create my character, no idea what it was, because the second I loaded into my world, it was a slideshow, like literally 1 frame a second or worse. And I never made it past the, like, I got out of the opening cinematic, and I would hit W or whatever it was, and it was like 1 frame a second, it felt like. And I was extremely bummed that my little, 3-year-old laptop or 2-year-old laptop at the time couldn't run this game.
Yeah.
And I guess I haven't really played it since. There was like a stint in 2021 during the summer where I played it for like 2 weeks. And I enjoyed what I played of it. But I was also very new to MMOs on the PC, so I bet you if I went back to it now, I'd have, a better time. But
yeah,
but I was so excited for that game, and then I just, couldn't. But I would agree, though, that like the Baldur's Gate 3 hype was something different, and something that you and I have talked about before, and I've talked about with our friend Tempest and our friend Weevil. It's a common discussion, is just like, there's so many games, what's going to be that next big game that really just grabs everyone's attention? There was Elden Ring, that was one of them. Baldur's Gate 3. You could say Helldivers 2 was kind of that this year, but for as good as that game is, it doesn't have the gumption, or that's not the right word, but that Baldur's Gate 3 had, and maybe that the early access helped it, but like I didn't play much of that at all. And so all of my hype for Baldur's Gate 3 was entirely talking with you, talking with our friends. I would watch every, what they call it, the development from hell, or the whatever there were, the panel from hell or something. I'd watch all of those to get more information about the game. I can't remember, other than Fallout 76 and SWTOR, the last games that I followed that closely as they were being, led up to their release. And I don't know, this whole topic kind of came about because when you look at the rest of this year, there's nothing, there's just, it's almost like this void, right? Like
it's
last year we had
it's
all
the
of
year
that.
of DLCs is what I've heard it been called, and that's probably true if you think about the biggest titles and properties that I'm excited for that are coming out this year, other than Hellblade 2. They're all DLCs. So you have, we're starting out with Destiny 2 coming out this Tuesday. And then we have Shadow of the Erd Tree. We've got Dawn Trail. We've got The War Within. Guild Wars 2 evidently is going to be announcing something soon, so that'll be interesting. Because we got Shadow. If you think about it, we got Shadow of the Obscure kind of out of the blue, and ArenaNet is famous, if not their shareholder meeting in Korea or whatever that got it leaked.
Yep.
About Guild Wars 3. If it's not them, it's ArenaNet just saying, hey, their PR department's kind of all over the map. But so they could be announcing something come October, which I think that's when Secrets of the Obscure came out. So
no, it was August of last year. I think they had announced it by this point into the year, and that's why last year I think it's such a different feeling, because we were looking at Baldur's Gate 3, Secrets of the Obscure, Starfield, and then I had the new RuneScape combat skill. And so I'm looking at August and September. I'm like, there's like no time for any of this. So, but you're right. I 100% agree that it's the year of the DLC.
Yeah. And there's no telling what else will pop up. So I'm okay with that for what I have coming up on the plate. So it's going to be some MMO skipping here and there, but
which is
and some catching up and some So save a little moolah, I suppose. But
I'm gonna have to do that once this house whole gets situated, But so. What have you been up to, Shiloh? I know it's probably Destiny 2 related. We're going to talk about that at the later part of the podcast. But anything else?
I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing. I'm just kidding. I've been playing Destiny 2. That's pretty much it. It's been prepping and getting ready for stuff, running around with Swine and Reaper at night, doing stuff. We've been doing dungeons and just trying to gear up and finish out stuff. I feel pretty good about going in. There's a lot, because every time a new expansion comes out, at least Bungie is pretty good about doing this. They generally try to streamline things. Kind of wish Guild Wars 2 would do this, because they have so many different currencies that it's obscene.
Oh, yeah.
But they're taking away legendary shards. So pretty much the only currency in the game is going to be Glimmer.
They're taking away legendary shards? That was like the bread and butter. What about Ascendant shards for...
Yeah. You're still going to need those, and enhancement cores and prisms and ascendant shards and all that stuff. But
at least
the legendary shards, basically the only thing they were good for were upgrading gear like to 5 to 7, I think. But then it cost prisms and enhancement cores and things. It's kind of a currency. In fact, the only two things in the game you can really buy with legendary shards are raid banners and phantasmal fragments on the moon that you can convert to Glimmer at Rahul. So that's pretty much it.
But it feels like this is a bit of a backpedal, because Glimmer used to be everything, and then legendary shards took over and became like what you did for all stuff, and then Glimmer kind of became useless, and so now they're going back to that.
Yeah. And they raised the cap on Glimmer, so I think it was really, really low while we were initially playing the game. It's a 500,000 now, so you can.
Okay,
it's good, and I'm guessing they're gonna raise that cap even further, but maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, just a lot of Destiny 2, just having fun with that. Got now the Masters of 0 Hour, thanks to Big Cheese.
Yes.
But Swine and Reaper and I, and Maddie too, P. Maddie, our buddy, we found a glitch in the system is all I'll say. I don't want to disclose too much information. Not saying we cheated the system or bucked it, but yeah, we we managed to get through a legendary 0 hour and get some new crafted perks for the new crafted version of Outbreak Perfected,
Nice.
which is going to be a monster. It already is kind of a monster, so it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun doing that. So, yeah, stuff like that. Just trying to get ready for the final shape, which is going to be here shortly.
Mm-hmm. The day after this episode comes out. So if you're listening on release day, you've got 24 hours or something.
Yep.
I have done, video game wise, I've honestly played mostly Fortnite, and I can hear the groans now. But the reason is with all well, that's true. With all the stuff going on outside of gaming and just in life in general, it's like I've got a really good college friend of mine that is all in on it. And so, it'll be like 8 o'clock at night and he'll be like, well, you want to hop into this for a few hours? And I'm like, you know what? Let's do it, because then I can turn my brain off. I don't have to think, and I just go. On the flip side of that, I did get through the Western Corthus in Final Fantasy XIV. I've got all the Aether Currents. I can now fly there. But as Tempest had...
It's a big zone.
Well, yeah, but as Tempest wisely pointed out, you get the ability to fly after you really have nothing left to do in the zone. So that seems to be the case here.
Maybe I can go back and farm stuff, I suppose.
It's a neat zone. Not my most favorite zone. I think I've found that I don't really like winter zones much. Ever since the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim came out and kind of made the de facto like winter looking areas, nothing seems to come close. I'm trying to think of other games I've played, and
I think Guild Wars 2 does the best.
Oh yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
You think about like
the one where you can go underwater and all the Coden or have their little ships and stuff. Yeah. That one's neat.
Frost Gorge Sound.
Yes. So yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah. What's the one in Ice Brood?
Oh yeah, that's your favorite one. And I don't
like
remember
that
what no, I don't know what it is either, but I do know what you're talking about.
It's not my favorite, but yeah, it's a
well,
fun
is your
one.
favorite of that Living World Season 3, I think. Because the others were like very boring. the one where had the giant pit that you'd go into and it was like blood red. And then the eastern side of Divinity's Reach.
Yeah, that was not my favorite. Lake Doric.
Yeah. So my point though is I guess I just don't enjoy like winter zones as much in games, especially open world games like this or MMOs. Like I feel like I'm always drawn to the desert ones or maybe like jungle is kind of like the biomes that I'd be most interested in. So anyway, Western Corthus is just a frozen tundra, and zone wise, whatever, right? But story wise, and this was the thing that we've talked about with Final Fantasy XIV. Everybody says it, but the game's story is really good. And while I'm probably not too far into Heavensward, so far it's really interesting and entertaining. And I really love it for that. I'm now in the Dravenian something.
Hinterlands.
No, the Hinterlands is the southern one. It's the one to the, or maybe I don't know. It's the one to the west of Western Corthus. And you go there with a particular character whom was, without spoiling things, your enemy at one point. And just a very interesting storyline so far. A lot of intrigue and sort of political mystery going on. And I really like that when it's done well, and I think it is done well in this one so far. So I've been doing a little bit of that, but then I've also been playing RuneScape again. I realized my Premier membership still had time on it, and so I went and I finally got Necromancy to level 99, so all my skills are at least 99 again, which is max. Well, in quotes, because Necromancy goes to 120, but 99 was like the old max. And so I have been just kind of putzing around there, doing some stuff. That game is really good about, there are so many things. Like if you want to go fight something, the entire economy is open too, right? So like, to put this into like Destiny 2 terms, maybe, like let's say for 0 hour, you know that if you complete it, you get Outbreak perfected. If you complete it on the legendary version, you get a better roll or something.
Yeah, well, you used to get that's how you got the catalyst, right. I think, in the old days.
In the old days.
In the more recent old days, I think it just would drop from a strike, or maybe it was a nightfall. I don't remember. I think that's how I got it. But nowadays, in these times, in 2024, you got to keep up with the Joneses. But it's a craftable weapon now, so they made it where it drops craftable, and then you, I think if you had the catalyst, you can put the catalyst on. But if you didn't, I think that's how you get the catalyst, is going back and doing it on legendary, which is really, the enemies aren't any harder. I don't think they are. It didn't feel like it anyway, but the route is completely different.
Right.
So it's a little bit more tricky.
In the same capacity, like let's say that in Destiny, if you did all this and you went and got that crafted Outbreak, you could, or you got it to drop and then you could craft it, whatever. Every time you did 0 hour, if you got the gun, you could like sell it to other players. So like if Destiny 2 had like an open economy, well, that's where RuneScape sits, is where like anything you do in that game, you know, you can probably trade it, you know, stuff freely. So, I mean, with the exception of like specific quest rewards and whatever else, but like a new boss comes out, you can go fight that boss. If you get its drops, you can freely trade it to other players. And so, but when you go do this stuff, like, let me think of a good example. So I wanted to go kill these abyssal demons to level necromancy. So you can, you know, it's a combat skill. I can go and level it. You know, like for you guys have to go and you have to learn the route in Destiny 2 0 hour. You know, for legendary, you have to learn a different route and all this. You might have to prepare which weapons you're going to bring. Does legendary lock it out?
No.
Is that still a thing? Is that on like
for Nightfalls and
So, I mean, you know, like when we would do those Grandmaster or Master level Nightfalls, we'd be like, okay, which guns is everybody bringing? Let's make sure, you know, we've got everything covered. I really enjoy that part of games, and so that's where RuneScape does really well. So I wanted to go fight these abyssal demons. Well, to do so, I'm trying to do it, like grind it out, which means killing a whole bunch of them over the course of like an hour or whatever it is. And so to do that, I need not my normal combat gear. So I take, you know, you take your normal 2 weapons, and then you take like your normal chest and leg piece, and then a headpiece, and then boots. But then because they can be poisoned, you can bring these specific gloves that do poison damage to anything you're fighting. But then because these demons specifically drop ashes, you can wear a specific necklace that when ashes are dropped, it automatically scatters them and turns them into prayer points. And you need prayer points to slowly regenerate your health over time. And then on top of that, like you might have an item from the invention skill in your inventory, because your weapons are augmented, that when they reach a certain level, they will auto, I guess, not disassemble, but siphon the experience. And so they level up. And it's this whole thing, you know, it just sounds like a complex nightmare. And the reality is you don't have to do any of this stuff to go fight it, right? You can walk in there and fight them just with whatever gear you've got, and you'll be successful depending on your level. But because what I was trying to do was do it very like AFK or just as efficient as possible, I'm taking into consideration all these things. You know, in my pocket slot, I had a grimoire that did a special attack while activated. You know, I also had these potions of aggression where all creatures around you are automatically aggravated to you, so you don't have to like click on them to fight. You know, all these little things that you have to keep in mind when you're trying to be like the most efficient. I love that stuff, and that is why you know, like Master Nightfalls, and when we did I think we did a few Grandmaster. It was the one with the drill. The giant drill, because it was apparently easy, or I think it was really that the ads, like maybe they were weak to Witherhoard or something at the time. I just remember Witherhoard was just god tier, frankly, and you would do certain Nightfalls when that would be their rotation, because Witherhoard made them like a cakewalk. And I remember we farmed Ascendant Shards. So anyway, I love that type of stuff, and that's where RuneScape, you know, if I wanted to think, I've been diving into that. But I don't know, that was a long-winded tangent on how to kill abyssal demons the most effective way, I guess. But I did play Hellblade 2 for about an hour. Now, did you touch it at all?
I haven't touched it yet, because every time I think I want to jump into it, I don't have quite enough time on my hands, and I'm like, well, let's just hold it off. Hold off.
You need at least an hour.
Well, I was thinking 2 to 3 is kind of what I'm, and I have in the past. I've had some days where I've been able to do it, but I've just been kind of pulled towards Destiny, just trying to get ready for it. So, well, it's going to be there. So.
Well, I've played an hour of it or so, and I enjoy it. So far, and you know, you can't judge a game by an hour really, but so far it's just more of what you liked in the first one. Now, it is gorgeous. The game looks incredible. It's running smooth. I think, you know, my computer's a little more beefy than yours, but like, it's like they did photo telemetry or something, as far as like the assets and the textures and everything in it. So it looks just photorealistic at times. And it's good, but like I said, it is what you'd expect it would be so far. So I don't think I've encountered anything new.
Yeah,
I don't know if, other than like what's happening in the story, but I don't know if they're gonna add stuff. I don't know. I watched a few like release day videos about it that were all spoiler free, and they were just saying the same stuff. Like, it's, you know, if you liked the first one, you'll like this one. It's the same style and everything. So, yeah, it's hard right now. It's hard for me to sit down and be like, I'm going to devote my time to a single player game. I did end up downloading it on PC because I was like, well, I'm not going to play it on the TV without headphones, because you need headphones to play a Hellblade game effectively. Yeah. So it's like, well, I'm just going to do it on the PC. But like you're saying, like, you really want to set aside no less than an hour, probably 2, to just really, you know, in these chunks, give it a play. And I just haven't really had that where I want to sit there and not talk to anybody and do that. So
yeah,
it's good, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. And just kind of like, maybe it'll be on the back end of the summer or something, but All right. Let's dive into the almost final shape.
Guardian. Eyes up, Guardian. It worked. You're alive.
It's no surprise to anyone that has been on the internet and loosely follows anything Destiny, but Cade 6 is back somehow. I don't know how, because I am not as involved as Shiloh is, but that's kind of like what I have found on the internet is a big pull for people to kind of return to the game. I mean, it's no surprise that Cade 6 was most people's favorite character. Obviously, Zavala and the tragedy of us losing Lance Riddick is, you know, people love Zavala, but like Cade 6 was that comic relief to the the very serious Zavala, and so it's enticing. But what we want to talk about for this part, you know, turn it to Shiloh because he's going to lead this. Really, is the stage is set. This is literally releasing the day after this episode comes out, the final shape. What's going on in the game? We had this Sony leak, this massive leak, if you want to speak to that as well. But like, you know, what's the state of things? What do you think the final shape is going to do? If you have to put spoilers here, you know, just I don't care personally for the sake of the show, but just for our listeners.
I don't think anything about the leak. First off, way to go, Sony! You've done it again.
Classic Sony.
I don't mean to. I'm not poo-pooing on Sony, I suppose, but it's very. I mean, you know, I the proud owner of an Xbox Series X. And of course, I have this PC, and so those are my two console and PC. Those are my little friends. And I sold off a PlayStation 4 a while back when I got my PC, and the sole reason I had that was for Final Fantasy 14. And now you can play that on Xbox, so it's whatever.
Yeah.
But Sony has been kind of. I mean, we talked about with Helldivers, what they've done with that,
which they did come back on. I don't know
they
if they
did come back on, but no, we never mentioned that. So I guess my apologies, whatever, to go out to Sony, and then I quickly take that back because of what they did to Bungie, and just as their boss, and basically just said. Yep. Well, let's just open up the floodgates for an hour or two, and you know, somebody switched on the final shape button or whatever they have going on there, and so select people got to play the tutorial for the final shape.
So what determined if you could play it? Like, did you just have to be online? I guess you just had to
be online at a particular time and manage to hit, you know. I don't know exactly how that all worked, but yeah, certain people got to play it they got to play the tutorial, maybe give people enough time to do a little bit of like poking around, and then, you know, of course, some of these dum-dums leaked stuff out.
Yep, of course,
because, you know, they're dum-dums, and I guess, you know,
internet
can keep
points,
their mouth
I
shut.
guess.
So yeah, internet points and style points or whatever. Anyway, but nothing major, I don't think. I've kind of, other than watching videos of Destiny 2 YouTubers and stuff like that talk about it, with in particular Astacross mentioned and kind of laid into both Sony and these, I'll just say for the family episode, dum-dums.
It's not the word Shiloh wants to use.
Laid into them a little bit for leaking stuff, because it's not cool. I mean, there are a lot of people that are really riding on this stuff And Bungie is, and that's the worst part. Bungie has actually done such a good job about, and they generally do a good job about kind of keeping stuff close to their hip and not really letting out some things. So,
and this is like a big pivotal moment in that entire
in the whole franchise,
right?
yeah,
like 10
not
years
just,
in the making.
Not even just Destiny 2, but also Destiny 1. You know, this has been going on for years. So,
and after Lightfall, it's kind of like a make it or break it for the series. So, I didn't look into it at all. I've just been busy.
That's what happened. So. And eventually Sony figured it out and they pulled the plug and took their servers offline, et cetera, et cetera. So tried to do as much damage control as they could, I suppose. But, you know, it's what it is. And the NDA had been lifted from, you know, the media. There are, you know, lots of the Destiny 2, what would you call it? Influencers, I suppose, have been able to play a little bit. Destiny let them play parts of the final shape. And so they had and they were allowed to, you know, show some of their clips of them playing with certain things. And, you know, none of the story elements, obviously none of the raid elements or anything are going to be, they couldn't talk about any of that, but they didn't get to see any of that. So they got to see what Bungie wanted them to see and then report on that. So, but yeah, so really not much to say about it other than, you know, if I just wish people would kind of stop doing that, but whatever. It's not necessarily their fault. The players that got to play, and you know, if you got to see something, you would probably want to tell your friends, and then they would tell their friends, and that's how all this stuff starts. So I'm sure there were a few that probably maybe had some malicious intent, but probably not that many. It was more just, hey, look what I saw. You know, well, that's great.
I mean, some games, Baldur's Gate 3, randomly are like, yeah, we're going to move up our release date. So it could have been even people are like, what? You can get into the expansion now? And then, you know, it blows up from there. But
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know who's to blame or if that really matters at the end of the day. It's just like, if you look at all of the space games that we have gotten over the course of 10 years, maybe there's been a massive, like one of the more recent Mass Effects. But like Destiny and Destiny 2 are basically near the top of space related things. You know, it's space fantasy. It's from the creators of Halo. And so this is a big franchise, and a lot of the Lightfall disappointment was just how far, you know, how bad the story was or whatever. And so a lot of people are expecting this is going to be the one that either breaks it for them or turns around the ship and rights the ship. And I mean, this expansion is the end of an era. And so what I'm curious is like, well, how's it going to set up? You know, like, this is clearly a franchise that's beloved by many, many people, whether they play the game currently or not. You don't have a lot of space fantasies out there. And so what we know so far, right, is that this is the finale of light versus dark, correct? And prismatic is, that's technically a dark subclass?
No, it's both.
It's both. And
so that's what makes it prismatic. So it's a combination of both elements. So the way it's going to work, you're going to have a light bar, like you would for a light super or a dark super.
Okay.
That, you know, you basically fill out. You're also going to have a dark sub bar that you're going to need to fill out. Once those two bars are filled out, then you can activate prismatic, which opens up an entirely different array of things. So you're basically counting on so you have different abilities,
Right.
Say your class ability, which I guess it would be tied to a light or dark, maybe not. Then a melee, which you can select from either a light or dark. So you're basically, and then your guns and stuff obviously can be either stasis or strand, which would be in the kinetic slot or the power slot, and then your solar void arc would be in that energy slot. So you're kind of trying to balance out the damage your abilities and stuff are doing on both bars to activate prismatic.
So is there going to be any reason for players to go back to being just a singular light or dark class? Subclass?
And people don't really know that right off the bat. So it's hard to say. It's going to be a delicate balance for them to kind of, it's going to be a very fine tightrope act, I think, for them to really walk across, because it's going to be, well, we want this to be new and fun, and we're kind of opening up the sandbox to just say, hey, you guys just go to town, have fun. This is prismatic. Let your chaos and class, or sorry,
Freak flag fly, or
all of your theory crafting, building and stuff just go completely nutty with it. And so just letting just everything loose. But so it'll be interesting to see if that's going to be a little bit too overpowered, OP, and then that would cause people not to even want to go back to a simple arc or solar void or even stasis or strand subclass. I don't think that's going to be the case, and I think they're going to be, especially in raids and things like that, there's going to be a need for probably both, but mostly probably the OG
but they
subclasses.
They nerfed Well of Radiance, so what are you going to do now? How are we going to survive the one phase on
the meme of get good? I guess I don't know. Yeah. It'll be interesting. I think that they really just wanted to stay away from. That became the meta of well, there's a warlock, he'll bring Well of Radiance, and you just pop that. Everyone stand in the well and fire off. And
I'm tired of digging these holes, Grandpa. That's too damn bad. I'm tired of Well of Radiance,
much
of being the well boy.
So we'll see how everything plays out. But they have done new things to offset that. I think there's going to be some new exotics that will allow warlocks and other classes to do more interesting, involved things. Plus, they're adding other than Lumina, which I think was the only hand cannon or any gun in the game that could do this, but would heal on a hip fire shot. So you could hip fire. You needed kills for the noble rounds. And then when you got those noble rounds, you could hip fire at your allies and heal them, like offer like Cure 2 or whatever. Restoration 1. I don't remember what the exact buff was, but he would heal your allies. Now in the final shape, they've actually introduced, I think one of the destination guns is a AR, an auto rifle that does sort of the same thing. So, and the warlocks are going to have a exotic headpiece where it makes instead of a stasis turret that I used to use on the warlock for stasis, where you chuck your grenade and the grenade makes a little icy turret that would just fire off at enemies and freeze them. They're doing that with with this helmet. You're going to be able to do that with basically make a restoration turret, and the restoration turret will just fire off those sort of noble rounds to heal allies and stuff, and also drop orbs of power. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how all this plays out in the sandbox, because no one really knows what's in store and what the meta will evolve to be. They've recently released the artifact mods for the season, and it's going to be interesting. There's lots of stuff for pulse rifles are getting a huge buff. So that will probably definitely be meta to bring into for a primary
Outbreak,
anyway.
baby.
Yeah, that's why we've been kind of real diligent on our outbreak escapades, as it were. But yeah, there's lots of stuff on swords in this artifact mod and some void stuff. So we'll see. And, we're just going to have fun with it and play with it. One interesting thing, I think you would mention Cade 6. So
Yes.
I don't know how big of a spoiler this is, but I'll try to explain it as best as I can, because the Season of the Wish is what kind of has not necessarily exposed why Cade 6 is back, but it definitely explained why, I think. But it was hidden
if
in a
you
journal
don't want to
entry.
know,
Turn off
stop
your,
listening for the next 10 minutes.
which I don't know why you wouldn't, but yeah.
Yeah, if you're not currently playing it, then, well, here's the deal.
And you don't.
You're going to miss out on that season, right? By Tuesday.
Yeah.
So
you
just might as well find out now.
Yeah, it's Shiloh telling me, or someone,
Or the internet telling you. And Shiloh's better, so than those
I'm
random
better than the
folks on
internet.
the internet. Of course.
even though I'm here on the internet. So anyway, so I guess this journal entry was hidden on one of their mini lore notes or something on a ship somewhere, but it's mentioned. And I think Bife was originally which, if you haven't watched, we should go ahead and mention this, but my name is Bife on YouTube. If you're getting into Destiny, or you like Destiny, but you're like, I don't know, if you really want to watch a 10-hour plus story of Destiny from the beginning to end, watch this, because it's I haven't even gotten through 2 hours of it, but it's I've followed his stuff for a very long time. Well, it feels like a very long time, probably 3 or 4 years, but
Yeah.
the man's got it going on. He's got a great British voice.
Yep.
And does really good work with other collaborators on basically offering up both audio and visual images of Destiny stuff. It's really well done. So it's basically a complete lore history lesson, all mashed up into one for 10 hours. So definitely worth a watch.
I might try to watch it tomorrow in the background while I'm working and see if I can get through the whole thing before the final shape launches.
Yeah.
Just to be on the same story page as all you people.
Yeah. But okay, so what I was going to mention was
Yes.
so there's a little it's mentioned briefly in this little snippet, but it's very, very important, and to understand why Cade 6 is back. So,
Which the last time we saw him, the Crow, or Prince Uldren Sov at the time, shoots him in the head with his own gun, right? With Ace.
yeah, he shoots him with Ace of Spades.
And that's after he basically tricks Cade in the prison of elders. I made that up, maybe. And then the Mad Max Elixni decide to use that opportunity to sort of ambush him. They blow up his ghost, which means,
He's mortal.
Yeah. And that's where we're at. So
Yeah.
how does he make a return from that?
So Crow has been back in. Yeah. This is kind of a dual resurrection, I suppose, because Uldren was technically killed by Riven at the end of Forsaken. So Cade dies at the beginning of Forsaken, and that's Forsaken is basically the pinnacle of Destiny 2. You could you could say that Witch Queen was in there, but Forsaken really was the pinnacle of Destiny 2 storytelling, I think. And eventually Riven is basically tricked Uldren Sov. Riven has basically had a vendetta against the Awoken and Mara Sov and her brother Uldren, and basically corrupts Uldren and then eventually eats him, kills him. And then we see the crow come back, and he's resurrected by a ghost, his ghost, Glint. And so now Crow has a lot of explaining to do, I suppose.
And a lot of people that don't like him, including all of us.
To the Vanguard.
At one point.
Yeah, especially Petra, Venge, and even his sister. So there's been a lot of seasons and stuff that have kind of gone and tried to explain and kind of you get to see Crow, because he has amnesia, like he doesn't completely remember exactly who he was. And
I think that's the whole point of the ghosts, right? Like once you get resurrected, you don't
remember. Yeah. So, but he has these people that do remember. So, and I'm sure some of them have been very poignant on making sure that he knows. And some have forgiven, some haven't. But there's a little story in the season of the Wish, and Mara and the Crow are talking about wishes and Riven and Riven's death. Riven is basically brought back into Season of the Wishes because he is a integral part. Riven is a she. She is Riven. She's brought back into the story she is a integral part in how they're going to get inside of the Traveler.
But you kill her in the Last Wish, right? That's like
you kill Riven in the last
big part
Wish
of the raid.
Right. Spoiler, but that's a very old raid.
Yeah, it's at least 7 years old.
Yeah. So anyway, and Riven is talking. Well, sorry. Mara and Crow are talking, or what it seems to be Mara and Crow. What it really is, and you can tell, not necessarily, and it's written from Crow's perspective, but it's a kind of a mutual narrator that's kind of just telling how it played out, and the wording is such where you're like, I don't think that this is really Mara. And by the time you read through it, you're like, oh, well, that was probably Riven the entire time. He was probably talking to an illusion of his sister, which he started doing at the beginning of Forsaken. That's how he ended up being corrupted. Riven basically tricked him into thinking that Mara was, giving him go ahead, do that, go kill all these people and get corrupted. It's fun, that sort of thing. And Riven is up to hurl tricks, and but Mara in the dialogue offers like, is there anything that you regret or something? And the Crow, Uldren Sov, it basically says, I wish I hadn't killed Cade. And Mara in the dialogue says, oh, well, that's not that interesting. Oh, brother, oh mine, which is all the Ahamkara generally lead off, where when they talk to you, they say like, oh, guardian, oh mine, or something like that. So it's implied that basically Riven said this wish aloud, and so Riven has made it come to pass. So Cade has suddenly come back to life in the Traveler, and then he meets inside of the Traveler. Okay. And the Crow is basically trying to make up. It's a redemption arc for him, and he's basically throwing himself out there as, I will go into the Traveler to basically have a connection so we can bring troops in to stop the Witness, which is the big bad for the new season.
Where is the Witness right now?
He's penetrated. Sorry if that's the wrong, whatever. You nasty peoples. He's entered the Traveler.
Entered's not much better. Okay.
Not much better, no.
But which is still floating over the last city, right?
It's moved on into space a little farther. So
just a little less.
I think it was actually trying to escape, and then the Witness kind of said, hold on.
Well, and then wasn't the whole thing with Rasputin where like the traveler can't go anywhere. We'll blow you up or something. Yeah. Okay, so how does the Vanguard / the Crow know that Cade is back?
So at the end of this season, they had a big finale mission, which, spoiler again, it took you to a very, very familiar place if you ever played Destiny 1, which was the end of the story of Destiny 1, which was in the Black Garden with the big amorphous blob of the Black Heart, which you had to destroy with the two statues, the two big Vex statues. So you're basically fighting through these Vex, and then eventually you end that. But then they have this cutscene afterwards of the Crow completing his mission of basically falling through, because the veil is opened up on the Traveler, and so they figured out a way with Riven to enter the Traveler, but only one Guardian or whatever can go. So the Crow nominates himself, and everyone's like, yeah, sure, go ahead, buddy. Good luck. And so he basically jumps through, ends up landing inside of the Traveler, and then immediately gets attacked by somebody that you can kind of see off in the distance, and you recognize it's probably Cade. So him and Cade had this little gunfight back and forth. Cade throws a tripwire mine, and eventually there's a scene of the Crow and Cade with both their guns pointing in a basically reverse fashion, with Cade pointing down and the Crow looking up at him. And Cade says, the Crow says, "You're dead." And Cade says, "So are you." And then Glint pops up from next to Crow's ghost, and so Cade kind of backs off and offers his hand, and then they kind of stare off in the distance, and you're like, oh, okay, that makes some sense now. So I think that is a cool way for them to kind of end the season, just like, oh, okay, this would be interesting, because I think before, in my mind, I just saw this big conflict of like, oh, what happens when the Crow, and this big soap opera drama of like, I thought you were dead, I'm gonna kill you again, that sort of thing. It's just like, I don't really need that for the next story. But
well, it's interesting then, because if it's assumed that Riven is the one that has brought Cade back, I guess first, how is that possible? Like, how does Riven have that power? But probably just
she's
don't
a wish dragon. I mean, that's
Ahamkara. So
yeah. She granted Oryx a wish. She's granted Savathun wishes. Like, she can grant any. That's just what Ahamkara do. They're basically like they're dragons. That's what they're just. That's the fantasy part of Destiny.
Yeah. Does Riven fear the Witness then? Because why would Riven be helping the Guardians?
Yeah, she does fear the Witness. Most people fear the Witness and have good reason to.
Respect for your life, you should fear, apparently.
Yeah.
So what we know then, this is, as we talked about, kind of setting the stage for this big expansion drop and the future of this whole franchise. The Witness is inside the Traveler. But nobody else is, or is that's where Cade is, and that's where
Crow is.
But I thought you said they were in the Black Garden, or is that inside the Traveler? Wink, wink.
Yeah, that's yet.
So I wonder if we're gonna get a character reveal in this next expansion of kind of like the Witness, like the Traveler actually manifest, because so far in this whole series, the Traveler is a giant ball, which represents the bomb logic. That's a whole bit on the lore. Go watch My Name is Bife, listener. And the Witness is now the manifestation of the sword logic, or the pyramids, which we know that the Hive have worshipped this whole time. or the hive live by the sword logic, right? So it's these two things come together. And so it'll be curious to see. We've got the sort of de facto face of the darkness, but there's still a giant question mark, right? For the light outside of, say, the Vanguard, the Guardians, but that's not, it doesn't really feel like, it feels like we're almost waiting to see who is or what is the witness's counterpart.
Yeah. And there's, of course, the idea of the winnower and the gardener, which is brought up a number of times. And would the witness be one of those? Would the traveler be the gardener and the witness be the winnower? Or are these two things completely separate? Are these entities that are beyond both the witness and the traveler? So I don't know. There's a lot of questions for them to answer. They don't necessarily need to answer all of them right away, but I think that a good story and fun, interesting. It looks like there's going to be a good amount of horror elements to this,
which there always kind of has been in the relation of the pyramid ships. If you recall, I think it's the end of Shadowkeep. When you teleport into one of them for like the first time, and it's like all those like thin shafts of light with like the dark, the big statues, and it was unsettling, if I'm thinking of the right thing.
And it's going to be even more unsettling if you've seen pictures of what the witness has done inside of the traveler. It's basically the final shape, which is the cubing, the slicing, the
cleaving.
Yeah, the cleaving and reimagining of in what his mind is. Very Thanos-esque, very, I want this to be my way. And so there, I'm going to make this, I'm going to, not necessarily a whole lot of malice. I think the only thing malicious about the witness is the fact that it doesn't care for the traveler or anything that the traveler is for. Is just he's not going to not on his or her watch.
Have you seen Lost?
Yes,
all of it.
From what I remember.
Okay,
I think so.
Well, listener, this is about to be spoilers for Lost, but at this point, who cares? But so the character Jacob, so this is like season 6 stuff when they actually start to reveal about the island and stuff. There's the smoke monster, which you've seen the entire time.
Yeah.
And then there's this mythical Jacob that Benjamin Linus is always like, we got to go talk to Jacob, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And this is the whole thing. And John Locke, his character ends up killing Jacob, I think. I haven't watched this in probably over 10 years, so I don't know. But there's this episode that is somewhere in season 6 that is the background on Jacob and this other character who becomes the smoke monster. And I don't remember that character's name, but they are like light and darkness in this, and in this whole concept of Lost and what the show's about. Jacob represents, goodness and law and order, and then this other guy represents darkness and, chaos and unbalance and that type of thing. And so that's kind of what this feels like, is that like the traveler's Jacob, the witness is this other entity, and the man in black, maybe that's what he's called, I don't remember. And so I'll be curious to see how they end up doing this, because Lost, of course, I think they kill the smoke monster or something, but the whole point, aside from the fact that, it's purgatory and they all go to a funeral or something weird, whatever, the stuff that doesn't make sense about the ending of that show. Hurley and Jack and Kate, I think it ends up being Hurley, becomes like the new caretaker or master of the island, right? And so I'll be curious to see how this ends, because it does feel like it's setting up. I mean, look at the prismatic subclass for a combination of the two, in which either maybe like maybe this is like a siblings, like a Cain and Abel situation where the witness is Cain, the traveler is Abel, and there is some higher being than both of them that's kind of going to come in and intervene, or maybe merge them together or something into the final shape, which could be a diamond. I don't know. What is the final shape, right?
Yeah.
And then at that point, the prismatic class becomes like the only class, and you're able to mix, say, the one-shot solar gun from a hunter with the stasis. I don't know how it will manifest, right? But I'm thinking more not maybe mechanically. We talked about the mechanical bits a bit ago with the subclass and everything, but like story-wise, like you just talked about Cade. What if Cade, representing an exo, becomes the sort of new arbiter, whatever? I don't know. I know that what the voice of the traveler, what's his face? He dies in the Red War campaign.
The speaker,
that hasn't been a thing since then. So
yeah, which is what the new Warlock mask, exotic mask, is basically a speaker mask. That mask that he wore.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see where all of this goes. I don't really know. All I do know, if you've watched the most recent trailer, which is phenomenal, by the way, if you haven't watched it
when we finish this,
you see that almost Avengers type moment, because for the past few years they've been, starting in Beyond Light, we've fallen in line and become allies with the I can't even say that with members of the Fallen, with the Elzinki. And then we've fallen in line with Keitel, who's Callus's daughter, with her brand of the Cabal. In past seasons,
right? Like
too.
All of our traditional, and that's why it's so fascinating.
All of our traditional, I can't even talk tonight. Enemies are going to be,
it's the cicadas
are going to be sort of, and Sabathun, who is sort of, we've kind of come to terms with a little bit, because her sister is a real capital B,
Zivu
Arath, yeah. So
she's got. Well, I guess Oryx is dead. So, and Oryx was
Oryx is dead.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. But excuse that, which is another whole can of worms.
Nice.
Yeah. So Zivu Arath has been. Eris has done something with her. I won't necessarily spoil it for anybody, but
is that part of Lightfall? That's
part of Season of the Witch, which has a lot to do with Zivu Arath and Eris and Savathun. Eris basically does, it's really cool, but she basically outcasts Zivu Arath from her throne world, which is a big deal.
Savathun does.
No, Eris does.
Eris has a throne world? See, I need to catch up.
No, Eris doesn't, but it's convoluted and long, but it was a cool moment. But
yeah.
So there's that, because of Savathun's distrust for her own sister. And of course, the Hive will kill. Doesn't matter who you are. It could, sleep with you, and then you're dead in the morning. So, as far as the Hive was concerned. But so it'll be interesting if the Hive. I don't think they're going to be on board with this, but definitely the Keitel's part of the Cabal, and of course, Mithrax's version of the Listni, I can't even say it tonight, are going to be involved. But there's this huge Avengers moment where they have like Cabal ships the Kel from the Fallen, and they're all, and of course, the Awoken ships, and then the human ships are all descending down into the Traveler, which is like, it's just kind of one of those, kind of like in Star Wars and the newer ones with, they have the big, when Lando brings the big crew, with all those ships and stuff. Sort of. What
about
of those
the
ones.
Vex? Where have the Vex been in all this?
Like,
where do they
just
fit
the
into
Vex.
this? Well, yeah, sure.
There are Vex that are seen in one of the cutscenes, and one of them shoots at Akora. And I don't know why. Like, I don't know what the Vex are just in this weird, like, they're such ancient, weird, mechanical creatures.
Right.
It's really
like,
hard to really
they're
understand
sentient,
what they're...
but not...
Yeah.
They're complete, it's AI, right? Like, it's AI doesn't operate out of passion or whatever. It operates, as far as I can recall, the Vex were just
in their best interest, which could be lined up with the Witness, is my guess.
Or the Witness uses them to assimilate everyone else,
Yeah, they fall in line with whatever seems like the most logical. That's the only thing that I can really think of. But the Vex I don't even bother trying to understand what they're doing.
Screw the Vex.
Yeah. Ugh. But yeah, it's going to be a fun ride. I hope it's as hyped up. You'd mentioned Baldur's Gate 3, Fallout 76. Yeah. I think that this is, of course, maybe not to that level, but it is definitely ramped up pretty quickly over the past few months in people's hype about this, because for a while it was like, oh man, I don't know how they're going to recover after Lightfall, and then they had the layoffs and then the Sony acquisition, and they were in a rough spot, and they've turned the ship around. So we'll see if they can keep the ship sailing northward and not down into the toilet. So I think they're going to, everything I've seen, and I'm more interested in the story for all this than pretty much anything else, because this was the initial reason why I wanted to come back to play it. Even if I didn't think it was going to be that great, I was probably at some point going to try to play it. Just because it felt like the great send-off, and I don't know if that's how I'll view this, or if that's how a lot of these people, a lot of players, returning players, are going to feel like, all right, I just want to see the ship, sail off into the sun, or crash into the mountain, or whatever, however it's going to end. You just want to, see how all this ends and plays out. Whether or not people stick around past this, I don't know. There's been the Destiny 3 rumors. Is that a possibility? I don't know, but it feels like that they're kind of throwing everything to the wall to see see what they can do to keep everyone going and happy and kind of yeah.
So. On the topic of the Destiny 3 rumors, I wanted to kind of throw this out there. I don't think Destiny 3, like,
needs
that title, Destiny 3, is going to happen. And I say that because Destiny 2 released in 2019, I believe, which made my whole 7 years ago comment completely off, but whatever. Destiny 1 released in
2014, is that right?
Yeah, somewhere around there, I think it was. And it's been 10 years, effectively, of this whole series. And 5 years, goes by. So 2014 to 2019, that's 5 years. 2019 to 2024, that's 5 years. But the reason I don't think Destiny 3 is going to happen is because when they made the decision to move from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2, live service games outside of like World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, ESO, like the actual like Lotro, SWTOR, like traditional PC MMOs, live service stuff didn't happen. Like we didn't get this whole, all right, the game's just going to change like we do with like Fortnite, or there was Overwatch, although that's a whole other can of worms. So my theory was like, they released Destiny 1, but then this concept of like making this a whole live service thing where it's going to just keep going as long as there's funding for it and a passionate team to work on it. They're like, we need to chase that like hype of a sequel, like that launch again, and go for a Destiny 2. And weren't they owned by somebody at that point, Activision? So they could have been pushing that too. Activision is...
I think Activision bought them.
Was it after D2?
I think it was after... I don't know. It was after D2.
Okay.
But it was after...
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I would just be really surprised at a Destiny 3 when no other game right now is really like looking at coming out with a next, like a sequel or a whatever. Like World of Warcraft 2 is not coming. Final Fantasy 14 isn't turning into Final Fantasy 18 or whatever. There's not a second Elder Scrolls Online, although, we know ZeniMax Online is working on something. My point is the industry is in a place now where these live service, these like continuations can just kind of happen. And so they don't really need a Destiny 3 to come out. Now, I could be entirely wrong. Maybe they do. Destiny 1 being, the beginning of it all. Destiny 2 being a continuation of that. And now Destiny 3 could be the chance for this whole new storyline. And maybe they do a Destiny 3 and a Destiny 4. And those two, that's a whole 10-year storyline. Who knows? I just don't see it happening with how live service games have evolved, and there's a lot more support for that now.
The only reason it would come out, or that it would have to be a complete change of what Destiny has been in the past. Maybe not necessarily like it wouldn't bastardize the franchise, but it would spin it on its head to where you'd be like, okay, this is Destiny sort of, but it's not. If they made it more MMO-esque, like I think that the game is over the years has become.
Well, that's why I say the prismatic subclass is a good testing ground for this. Right.
And I think it might be what they might be leaning towards, because now that you have this saga that's ending, this big light and dark sagas, this is the end of it. The final shape is the end of that saga. And they said that, years ago when they had Beyond Light, Lightfall, and the final shape was their roadmap. That this could be a whole new thing. They could go off and they don't have to be beholden to, the EDZ and Venus from Destiny 1 and Mars and all these planets. They can go off to Andromeda 6 or whatever. And, you could go on
your planet
adventures.
From earlier in the episode.
Yeah. I talked to Reaper about this. You could go on adventures. I don't remember who, maybe it was Cross that was saying this, but you go on adventures, like just say, have a whole season where you just go around the world, almost like a bounty hunter thing with the Drifter. He's just like, oh, let's go to Andromeda. It'll be, be fun. And you just go off with the Drifter and you go and you see these planets, and they could have these more open world type of things and actually maybe have creatures and stuff rather than have Hive, Fallen, have these enemies. And that, because I think that's maybe the direction that they could go with it. And they could have these, get to go off and explore all these things that they haven't really explored, because there's plenty. I mean, Vive talked about it for 10 hours and I haven't even watched a fifth of it yet. So, I mean, there's so much out there that they could explore and do, but they can't really do that with a quote unquote traditional looter shooter mentality. They have to kind of maybe make it a little bit more RPG ish, maybe make it a little bit more MMO ish to kind of, maybe make a excuse if you're offended by this, but not you in particular, but a listener, maybe make it what Starfield could have been, maybe should have been, because I think that they have the design teams, they have the artists, they have everything in place. Yeah, I think, other than maybe some of the people that they let go, rip. But they have, I think, what they could do with it, and that would be maybe exciting for them to veer off into the future. But that's the only reason that I completely agree with you, that other than that, there would be no reason to. They could, if they just kept the same engine, because the game still looks great, it plays great.
On PC it looks, what little I played recently, it looks really good.
Yeah.
And
it always has. I mean, it still looks great on my Series X.
Yeah.
But it looked good on my Series X or my,
Xbox One X or something.
Yeah, my One X. So, and even Destiny 1 still sort of holds up. So
I would like to see somewhere, if this is the end of this era, maybe they do a Destiny 3 and 4, and that's a completely separate storyline and everything. I wish they would just do a compilation of D1 and D2 into the same game. Do it all the story content. I know that so much of it is tied to these seasons that are no more. But then like Destiny 1, like, how much of it's tied to the raids, like that
could be a direction they're going too. They could just say, well, we're going to pull the plug on 1. We're going to incorporate everything from 1 and 2 and just make it Destiny. And that could be the thing going forward. And if they wanted to do an offshoot thing from that, go for it.
Yeah. Because you can already do, I think, like you could explain it away as like simulations that your Guardian can go do that are like old stories that allow you to relive those moments for like a training purpose. I mean, that's what the Crucible is anyway, is this simulation fight, a training ground or whatever.
Right.
Like when you go to the Fellwinter's Keep or whatever it is, like, it's a simulation to historically teach whatever. And so that could be interesting, and you could do that and just group. That's what I would like to see, is exactly what you just said, is just Destiny, and put all of it into one game and make it into the next, this new live service situation. You can access it, and I don't know what it would look like exactly, because you can't really have 700 planets in the menu. But maybe you could. I don't know. That'd be a true MMO right there. So
yeah, just make it an entire disk drive, and just call it a terabyte. A terabyte download, and you're good to go. A lot of people would be shy away from that, but me, no, let's go for it. I got Destiny, my Xbox Series X. What else you got? Destiny. That's it. That's all. The only thing it can. That's all I can install in this thing.
Yeah.
But I don't. It just. We'll see. I just hope that the immediate future is bright, and I hope that even after the final shape is said and done, and we all get the crazy class items and have fun dancing around in prismatic underwear and stuff, that I still want to play here and there. That it has some legs underneath it. I know that Luke Smith has come out and said that we're not really done with Destiny 2. We have these, of course, when you buy the season pass, when you buy the deluxe edition or whatever, the $100 version of the final shape, you get the episodes afterward. They're straying away from the season. So they have three episodes that you get that are included. So I'm wondering if those will be separate,
like the
pay
finale
things. Yeah, I don't know, but very interested to see where it all goes after that, and how much explanation goes into those 3 episodes post the final shape, and kind of ties up some loose ends and sees. I know that probably the battle with Xivu Arath is coming around the corner, because she's probably not very happy that she got locked out of her throne world. And
get wrecked.
yeah.
Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode. I mean, the best thing to do is we'll just find out come Tuesday and beyond what this is going to look like. So, you have any other final thoughts before we exit stage right?
No, I don't think so. No. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listener, thank you for taking the time to follow up on our Destiny 2 discussion and see what the future holds for the game. We thank you. We thank you for spending an hour and some change of your day listening to two schmucks on the internet. Although Shiloh is the best of them on the internet. So you don't need to listen to those other guys. Just Shiloh.
Just me. Good old Shiloh.
All right.
Adios, everyone.
Peace.
Questing the Multiverse is brought to you in part by Coniff Productions, How's Wood Designs, and Joel Crawford. To follow along with our adventures, please follow us on Twitter at QTM Podcast and consider joining our Discord, a link of which can be found in the show notes or in our Twitter bio. Want your questions or comments read on the show? Email us at questingthemultiverse@gmail.com. Finally, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a review or a follow wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening.